Good afternoon to everyone joining us from the Netherlands, and good morning to people joining from the Caribbean or from Colombia. My name is Wessel Mol from Holland House, Colombia, and we are the bridge between the Kingdom of the Netherlands, explicitly including the islands in the Caribbean, and the Republic of Colombia. We promote trade through matchmaking, trade missions, events, and webinars such as today. And today the topic is agro-logistics. We will start with some opening words from Leontine Crisson from the embassy, from Arjan Kuipers from Nederland Distributieland, and we will continue with a presentation from Susanna Coccini and later from Anton Filippo. We will finalize with a little Q&A, so don't worry, you can put your questions in the chat and we will answer them at the end. Without further ado, we will go to Leontine Crisson for the opening words.
Thanks very much, Wessel, for that introduction. I hope everybody can hear me because there seem to be some people that didn't hear anything. I hope that was resolved. Meanwhile, I would like to welcome everybody to Colombia. My name is Leontine Crisson. I work as the Agricultural Counselor for the Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality here at the Dutch Embassy in Colombia for Colombia, Peru and Ecuador. And I'm joined here by my colleague Andres Santana. Well, I would like to do a hand raise, obviously asking who knows Colombia, who has already been there, who's already doing business, but the webinar format makes that a bit difficult, but maybe in the chat you can comment on that. Colombia is a very important country for the Netherlands in Latin America. That is also why we have an office for the Ministry of Agriculture here, and the Minister for Development Cooperation and Foreign Trade has announced Colombia to be a combi country. In Latin America, it's the only country that is given, I would say, more political priority from the Netherlands for several reasons. It's a land of great opportunity, I think. It's very diverse. And that also shows in the priorities that we are working on from the embassy. At the Office for Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality, we are working on circular and sustainable agriculture, mostly on the agri-value chain from which we, as the Netherlands, import from Colombia. We work on the priority of feeding the cities, for which agro-logistics is also an important subject, for which we've done this research study. And the third priority is land issues, forests, and biodiversity. With the new government here in Colombia, I think there's a lot of opportunity also for Dutch agri-related businesses. And the focus of this government on rural development is very important, obviously also in the context of the peace process. And in this context, we are very pleased to be presenting this research study by Resilience. Looking forward to obviously your feedback on what you will hear in this seminar. I think there are very many interesting opportunities. And I wanted to mention that all of the instruments of, for instance, RVO back in the Netherlands are available for Colombia, unlike for some of the other countries here in the region. So without any further ado, I think I would say I look forward to this webinar and to receiving also your reactions. As Wessel already mentioned, the Holland House here, the bilateral Chamber of Commerce for us at the embassy is also a very important ally. And you are most welcome to Colombia. Get in touch with the embassy, get in touch with Holland House if you have any ideas or questions. And I wish you all and ourselves, all of us, a very good seminar. Thanks so much. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Leontine, and indeed, everyone very welcome to contact both the embassy and us at Holland House. We will continue with Arjan, another person that you are very welcome to contact, and he can tell us a bit more.
Thank you so much. My name is Arjan Kuipers, Holland International Distribution Council. Let me share my screen. Would like to spend a couple of minutes to share with you the Dutch perspective towards agrologistics. Like I said, I'm representing Holland International Distribution Council. This is a private non-for-profit organization with over 300 members from the logistics sector in the Netherlands. Our network consists of public and private partners and knowledge institutes. And what unites all our members is that they are constantly looking forward to broaden their networks and strengthen their international relationship. In that respect, HIDC, Holland International Distribution Council, is the first point of contact for anyone seeking Dutch logistic expertise, especially also in the field of agrologistics. Our services are free of charge and relates to concrete matchmaking, organizing fact-finding trips towards the Netherlands, and also organizing trips towards outbound countries. We can provide neutral advice on partner selections, together, of course, with our partners like the embassy, and in this case also Holland Columbia House. And like I said, our services are free of charge. Let me share a bit the perspective on, like I said, what for us, why we think we have something to offer the world when it comes to logistics, and especially with the focus on agrologistics. Of course, the Netherlands has a very strong background on the production in the agro and food, being active in manufacturing in this sector for hundreds of years successfully, and has an important trading position. At the same time, also there is a lot of innovation going on the food prospect. And a lot of agro-related innovations are driving the sector forwards from a sustainable perspective, and digitization is of main importance over there. At the same time, our sector, logistics, is also identified as a key economic priority sector in the Netherlands, and we benefit, of course, from the fact that the Netherlands is ideally positioned within the European peninsula. We have a central location close to many European consumers. We have excellent infrastructure, physically and digitally. And we have, of course, a very pro-business attitude towards customs and phytosanitary services. What's key also over here, that we are able to provide high quality service at a competitive cost. And there, I think what I would like to say is where those two worlds of agro and logistics combine, it's called in the Dutch diamond, I would say, and that's agrologistics. I think it helps going forward for the entire discussion. When we discuss agrologistics, what is, from our perspective, what does it contain? It concludes all post-harvest activities that bring a product to the market at the best quality and safety, at conditions, at the right time, and at the lowest possible cost. It's not the sector or the chain. The value chain is a very specific one. It's highly regulated from a safety and perspective. Of course, all the products can deteriorate, which is also there's there's a lot of natural variation, I would say, and it's a very complex supply chain. Lots of SMEs are involved. What we are doing at the moment as HIDC, together with our partners from the agri and food clusters in the Netherlands, is building a community of companies from the Netherlands who are active in this sector and who have international ambitions. And we are currently building this ecosystem now. We recently started it, so this event is very beneficial for us, because we need to go to identify markets and to define product market combinations. But we are developing a community of companies with the focus on technologies. When it comes to managing system, that's the orange line above, and companies who are enabling products and services, which is the blue line below, all in the field of activities when it comes to storage, grading and processing, transport, distribution, and then of course also to the outlets. And the last two in the green in the middle, that is due to the e-commerce. We see a different go-to-market over there. That ecosystem, we have identified over 200 companies in those product fields, in the segments, and we are currently validating our strategy with them. That will will start in January next year. And therefore, we will also like to validate with them, where is it happening for you? Is it in Latin America, vis-a-vis perhaps Colombia? Is it Southeast Asia? Is it Africa? But with that knowledge, we are ready to define market strategies, and therefore, of course, also the input from a market perspective is extremely valuable for us. And thank you very much for this opportunity, the embassy in Colombia, that you've executed such a study, because that's valuable information for us. Finally, I would like to say also to Colombian entrepreneurs who are joining this webinar, there is a lot of information available on the Holland Logistics Library. That's cross-sectoral information also when it comes to agri-food and logistics in general. And if you need any contact, please reach out to me directly or via the embassy or the Holland Colombia House. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Arjan, and I'm very excited to keep working together for agri-logistics in Colombia and for Dutch participation in that sector. Now we will start with two presentations. We will have one theoretical and one rather practical presentation. Starting with the theoretical presentation by Susana Coccini of Resilience, and it's called Agri-Logistics in the Colombian Caribbean, the State of Affairs, Bottlenecks and Opportunities.
Thank you, Wessel, for the introduction. I will also be sharing my screen in a moment. I hope you do see my presentation, full screen. My name is Susanna. I'm part of the Resilience BV. Indeed, as introduced before and as mentioned, we have carried out this study under the request of the Dutch Embassy here in Colombia. Today, I will be presenting some highlights of this, some information about the context, about Colombia, about the agricultural productions and logistics opportunities, the bottlenecks that we encountered, and some opportunities that we hope can help solve them. Starting with a very big shot of Colombia. Colombia is a great country with a lot of agricultural potential, where 40 million hectares are suitable for agricultural production. Of these, only 1/5, so around 8 million hectares, are actually cultivated at this moment. So there is definitely a space to grow the production of different types of agricultural crops in this country. On another side, Colombia is also battling with high amounts of food loss and waste, because around 1/3 of the food that is produced for human consumption is either lost or wasted at different stages of the value chains. So there's definitely potential to improve in these numbers and save a lot of resources that get put into these productions. The study, as mentioned in the title, focuses on the Colombian Caribbean, and specifically in the regions of Atlántico, Bolívar, Cesar, La Guajira, and Magdalena, which you see highlighted in this map. What you can also see is that these 5 regions host 3 main ports, which are 3 of the 4 main ports of Colombia. Each of these ports over time specialized in the, let's say, in the operation in the handling of different products, with Cartagena, for example, specializing in the handling of fresh fruits and vegetables and flowers. Santa Marta also is used to export large amounts of fresh fruits and vegetables, especially banana and also palm oil. Barranquilla is a little bit different, because it is specialized especially in the import and export of bulk products, including the agricultural fertilizers, agricultural inputs, but also lately banana and coffee. Within Colombia, these 5 regions are connected to other departments and other regions via a different set of networks. One, of course, is the road network, which here is the most used for this type of distribution of products. However, there is also the Magdalena River, which connects several departments from the center of the country all the way to the coast and its outflow in Barranquilla. Barranquilla indeed as both the maritime port and the fluvial port, and the region of Bolivar and Magdalena are also quite well connected with the Magdalena River. And the Magdalena region itself also can count on a railway that goes from Caldas, which is again a little bit more towards the center of the country, towards all the way to the docks at the port of Santa Marta. In these 5 regions, it's possible to encounter very different types of agricultural production that coexist. For example, in Magdalena, Cesar, and La Guajira, there are very large states of banana production, mostly destined for export, as well as in Magdalena and Cesar, oil palm production is also comes very large estates. There are also some more medium and smaller farmers that operate in these areas, from subsistence agriculture to a little bit more on the medium-sized estates. And in this case, the majority of the products cultivated in these regions are mango, corn, rice, cassava or yuca, and cacao as well is one of the ones that is growing. In these 5 regions we highlighted, there are 3 main large distribution centers, which are located in Cartagena, Valledupar in Cesar, and Barranquilla in Atlántico. What we found during the study is that unfortunately there is a mismatch between the production of this, the agricultural production of these regions, and the consumption of the agricultural products from the inhabitants of these regions, and that is because it was found that often the large majority of the agricultural products commercialized in these big distribution centers do not actually come from these regions, but from other departments more towards the center of the country, such as Santander, Valle del Cauca, which have larger agricultural production and more varied, for example, offer of horticultural products. This is this is an unfortunate situation because it means that these regions always have to rely on other inputs, and yeah, there is a lot to improve in that sense as well. In terms of bottlenecks that we found, well, unfortunately, that there are not few, and there are bottlenecks that affect very different steps of the value chains. I will go through a few of them. In the production phase, so just starting from the field, the farmers are mostly struggling now with the high cost of agricultural inputs, which does not come as a surprise, unfortunately, given the developments of the last couple of years. When it comes to having their products reaching the customer and the consumers eventually, so our tables, our supermarkets, and so there is also quite some bottlenecks, quite some issue that prevent farmers to capture the whole value or the largest part of the value of the crops that they actually grow, so of their hard work to produce this type of items. These bottlenecks in this phase are very much connected to each other, and starting from the difficulty for farmers to organize their own transport to markets and to bigger cities. They often do rely on intermediaries, and it's also a fact that here in Colombia many times there's multiple intermediaries between the producer and the consumer, which of course also lowers the margins for the farmers and the capturing of the value that they actually produce. But sometimes there is simply no other ways, because the farmers do not have the means to get, for example, their own vehicles and organize their own transport, while this is something that the intermediaries take the cost and the risk of, which are quite high as well because of the bad state of especially the tertiary roads that connect rural areas to markets and to cities. In terms of especially the fluvial transport of fresh agricultural products, as we see in the Magdalena River, connects many regions in the country. It's not navigable throughout its whole length, but still for a quite large part. Now, this type of navigation is not necessarily used for fresh agricultural products, and that is because of a chicken and egg situation. The fluvial ports that we can encounter along the Magdalena River are not equipped with cold chain structure, so with structure that can maintain the cold chain. And the demand, and this makes it so that the demand for the fluvial transport of fresh agricultural products is quite low, but at the same time, with the demand being low, it's the investments are just not being happening, so it's difficult to progress. Also, not to forget is that the time of transport from Barranca Bermeja, which is in the Santander region, so north, in the center of the country, a little bit more towards our regions already, the regions of the study, to Barranquilla, it can take from 4 to 5 days, while via road, it can take from 1.5 to 2 days. So that it doesn't make it very attractive or very competitive to ship fresh and especially perishable agricultural products via the Magdalena River. Specifically talking about the ports that we contacted, of course, the three that we highlighted earlier suffer from the general global logistics challenges as well that are very well known, I'm sure, to everybody after the developments of the last couple of years. But also in their own operations, they do lack of coordination of they have a lack of coordination and standardization of inspection for reasons that can sound very simple. For example, just authorities the different authorities that need to inspect the cargo are not necessarily present at the port premises at the same time. So this can cause delays in receiving and shipping the cargo and the items. Finally, when it comes to export, it does not come to a surprise as well that exporting has higher cost, and this cannot always be borne by small producers, small or medium producers. There are some certain requirements that maybe they're not able to meet, or they do not have the resources to meet. So most of the times they find themselves almost obliged to just sell their products, even if it could be export grade, to intermediaries or to other exporters, and again losing part of the added value that they're producing with this type of high-grade collets, high-grade products. When it comes to exporting specifically to the Caribbean islands, and in this case, well, we will talk about it more later, but we are referring mostly to the Dutch Caribbean islands. This is again very expensive. The volumes that these islands require, although it's high in percentage in terms of their consumption, they're still quite small because they are so far importing from different sources, and the lack of cargo consolidation practices or the limitation in this type of practices definitely does not help this type of business case. But we will get back to it later. Now, building from these bottlenecks we've identified and some potentials that we found in the studies, we identified and put together these 6 opportunities. Some are a little bit more pure agro side, some a little bit more agro-logistics. I will go through them a little bit more in detail for a couple of those, and the others you can definitely find more details in the report, but otherwise I will be taking up the space of everybody during this webinar. So the first one that we identified is the mango processing. What we suggest is to set up a mango processing factory in the Magdalena region, and this is because there are very large amounts of mango being produced in this region. It's the 3rd region for mango production in the country. Unfortunately, there are also very high amounts of mango losses that have been registered in the last few years. These also this is obviously because of a lack of buyers and processors mainly, and at the same time, it's also something that came building over time, because until a few years ago, there has been a promotion at a national level to increase mango production. However, the promise of finding a market, so for example, setting up new processing facilities or so to absorb this extra offer of mango was not necessarily fulfilled. And this, for example, results in the fact that in the Magdalena region, there is no mango processing facility at all. What we believe is that the European market is definitely a great market to tap into, with a stable annual market growth in the last few years of 5 to 7%, against an estimated global average for for the global markets, annual growth of almost 9%. We also suggest that this facility can only process not necessarily only mango, but also other fruits, so that it can be able to run 12 months per year and be more efficient, cost-wise, of course. And as a potential byproduct, we identified mango seed oil or mango butter to be interesting to give a little bit more of a look into. We also have included some more information about this in the report, but I'm not going to focus on it right now. Financially as well, it's an investment that can be done in different types of with different production capacity. So from 3,000 to 600 tons to almost 10 times this. Kind of depends on what are the intentions of the person or the company that will take up the opportunity to do so. Similar feasibility studies performed in the past couple of years found that the potential internal rate of return is between 20 and 32% with a potential payback period of around 4 years. So it's a sound financial opportunity as well. In terms of positive social, environmental, and economic impact, we identified quite a few. And we believe that this establishment of such kind of factory can indeed have several positive impacts. First of all, providing stable demands of large volumes of fruit and not necessarily only mango, as we've seen. We are sure that this will reduce the losses of the mango harvest, especially in this region that suffered from it in the last few years. The value addition that comes from processing of the mango, so from this type of agro-processing, would be partially captured locally, and that can help developing the agro-industry sector in the region, in the country, and of course increase local employment and increase export and influx of foreign currency. In terms of potential risks and mitigating option, we did identify a few indeed, a few of these. For example, as we mentioned, difficulties in the transportation of the fruits from the producers or from the field to, in this case, the factory. Can be tricky because of the not so great state of the tertiary roads. Our idea is to start by just setting up own transport solution. So with a fleet of vehicles and drivers, which can also be then turned into some sort of more community engagement type of work, and also helping with other types of transportations. For a longer perspective, it's also possible to contribute to the road maintenance so that it will not benefit not only the company, of course, but also the community, the municipalities, and the region itself. We do believe there is a risk of unintentionally incentivizing the increase of mango production. However, we are convinced that it's not very likely this to happen, especially given the fact that mango producers already seen their, let's say, the previous investments of the last few years not necessarily met by the promises that were made. So we are sure that people will be a little bit more careful than, and maybe we would like to suggest to redirect them towards maybe expanding the production, but towards other types of fruits that can be also processed in this factory. On, let's say, the opposite side, there is always the risk of a lack of raw materials, maybe mango on a bad season, or maybe other fruits. The mitigation options that the mitigation strategy that we suggest is to, if it's a simple one-time problem, to source from different departments, because Colombia, as mentioned, has a very large offer of different fruits and different products, and it will not be a problem finding them from other departments. Finally, of course, as any big purchase of big volumes of fruits, this could lead to poor field labor conditions during harvesting seasons. So the mitigation option that we suggest is to start by, of course, paying fair prices for the raw materials, for the fruits, and then being very much on top of the sourcing strategy, of the sourcing activities, and making sure that growers themselves or pickers are, people that pick the fruits are ensured with optimal working conditions along the operations. Another opportunity that we found lays with the cashew production and processing. So this year in 2022, Agrosavia, which is the National Institution for Agricultural Research, published this study that mentions that the dry Caribbean, which is composed of the regions that we are talking about in this, in our study, is the region with the most potential for the production of cashew, thanks to its climate and soil characteristics. So far, the production of cashew in Colombia counts around 8,000 hectares. So it's very limited compared to the size of the country, of which a little bit more than half is registered in Vichada, which is another department more towards the west, towards the east, sorry. Only 200 hectares are found in dry Caribbean, and it's mostly familiar production or even wild production of cashew. Agrosavia also in the last few years developed 3 clonal varieties that are optimal for export, and they count maximum yields between 1,500 and 1,900 kilos per hectare, which is extremely impressive when compared to the national average of less than 300, the national maximum of 900 kilos, and especially to the global average of 600 kilos per hectare. So what we suggest here is opportunities that are very ambitious, but it's also as a very strong reward. We suggest to establish a cashew production of 800 hectares that would feed a processing plant also to be part of the investment that could process around 40 tons of raw cashew nuts per day. It is very ambitious, of course, and we can see that, and we'll talk about more in a second, but it's also has a very high reward of being the front runner of the development of the cashew industry in Colombia, and the cashew production in Colombia. Colombia, indeed, especially thanks to these, to the climate conditions, but also to these clonal varieties, has the potential to jump from an extremely limited cashew production to be one of the biggest producers of cashew in the Latin American region. Here as well, we identified a byproduct, which would come from the cashew apples, or the fruits that actually grows, from which the cashew nut, as we know it, grows. This can be turned into juice or meat substitute. And there are several research as well done by Agrosavia that can give more ideas to make use of this byproduct. Now, what we know about the cashew industry is that the challenge are the large scale volumes that are needed to make a Colombian cashew, like a Colombian grown and processed cashew, competitive on the global market. And this is because the large majority of cashew is grown in West Africa, but it's then shipped raw. So it's not processed locally, but it's processed in Vietnam and India, from where it then reaches our supermarkets and tables and granola bars. What we also encounter indeed is that, we suggest this extremely large volume, so setting up a cashew production for 8,000 hectares, which was basically double the current production. So we do know that it's ambitious. We don't know that it's a very big investment. We, anyways, identify the potential in establishing plantation or outgrowing schemes that are with smaller volumes, so a smaller amount of hectares. This type of plantation, the type of products grown there can be exported to countries with larger processing volumes. The closest of one being Brazil. The plantation can be, the processing plant can be established at a later stage when the type of volumes needed to feed it can be secured. We also suggest to go about certified organic cashew, as it will ensure higher margins. In terms of financial, I will go very quickly through it. The plantation and the unshelled cashew. So just growing the cashew. Well, here we wrote plantation, but also ungrowing schemes can give margins of an average €1 per kilo, while having also the processing plant and processing, so shelling the cashews here. Can give margins of up to €3 per kilo. The calculations are better explained in the report. In terms of social, environmental, and economic impacts, they are very similar to the mango ones, so I will not be repeating them. Also because I see that I'm going close to my time. In terms of potential risks and mitigating options, of course, these are different. So the first, let's say, obstacle is that Agrosavia right now does not ensure the availability of these clonal varieties in the Caribbean region. But we are sure that when such an investment would be made, that will bring enough traction and enough interest from Agrosavia to make it available also on the Caribbean coast. Investing in cashew production can virtually result in a monoculture, which is not what we want, which is not what we want to move forwards, because well, the bad effects are very well known. So as mitigation options, we definitely suggest to adopt intercropping schemes, or to make cashew production into an agroforestry production model, or even regenerative agricultural practices that will be beneficial to the environment. And cashew has also been historically linked to health hazards of the manual deshelling of these cashew nuts. While this is true, there are health hazards. It's also true that now automatic deshelling machines are available. So we do suggest to, in case the investor would take up also the opportunity to start a processing plant, we do suggest to go for the automated option. We encounter some, well, of course, we encounter the need for increasing the efficiency in small-scale production. 70% of the fruits and vegetables that are consumed in Colombian cities is produced by smallholder farmers, which are indeed battling with high prices of agricultural inputs and climate change consequences. In this case, we do believe it's a more of a hybrid knowledge. We call it a knowledge and business opportunity because it can also include knowledge sharing. We identified a few ideas, but this is definitely something that is needed. And if companies have innovative solutions for this type of production, they're more than welcome to look into it further. About the tertiary roads, as we've seen, they are deemed in a bad state, even by the National Road Institute in Envías, which found that 94% on a national level are indeed in a bad state. So it's not only the perception of the people that we interviewed, but it's actually facts, unfortunately. These roads are managed by different types of public institutions, and that makes it a bit challenging when it comes with maintenance and construction, as it is being done by public tendering, which can be challenging for foreign companies to apply and to participate in this type of tendering. There is an opportunity that can be promising, which is a scheme, let's say, that is called Obras por Impuestos, which literally translates to construction for taxes, which is sees that up to 50% of the income tax that is owned by either juridical or physical persons can be invested in infrastructure, constructions, or systems that have a social impact, and road construction is one of them. The organic waste transformation option, this is also something that relates especially to the food losses and waste that, as we see, are quite high in Colombia and can be tackled at different moments, at different points of the value chains. The opportunity here is to, well, it's not the only one, but organic waste can be transformed into energy and fertilizers, and for these are several good technologies, such as biodigesters that seem to be having very many benefits. The financial business case in this case is made by the variables such as cost of waste disposal, cost of electricity, and cost price of fertilizers, which can vary among the different regions and different areas. So we do suggest to reach out and if you're interested in this, and make the business case each time when somebody is looking at a specific area. We think that also these Obras por Impuestos that I just quickly introduced can be of help with this type of collaboration for a setting up of such system. Finally, the roadmap towards better integrated logistics and transport between Colombia and, in this case, the Dutch Caribbean, especially Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao. To make it a little bit of a recap of this one, the three islands are importing their fruits and vegetables mostly from the US, of course, which comes with great quality, but also high costs of transport and high prices of the goods themselves. there is a strong interest in switching imports towards countries that are closer in proximity, closer geographically, and that can offer the same level, if not, or very similar level of quality, such one of them being Colombia. What we've seen is that steps need to be taken from both sides, from Colombia, so the exporter side, and from the islands, so the importer side, and especially the role the Dutch companies can play in this case is to provide the knowledge, the technologies, or directly the services for cargo consolidation, which seems to be a great first steps to make this trade more efficient, more integrated between the country and the islands. This was my recap of our study. You can find the report. It's actually 2 different reports on the Agrobericht en Buitenland website. You can contact me for specific questions. There is much more details. I could speak about it for 2 hours, but we don't have 2 hours. So I leave it back to you, Wessel, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Susanna, and too bad we do not have 2 hours. Could you remind us quickly, where can we find the study? Is it published already?
Yes, it's published in the Agrobericht en Buitenland, in one of the last articles about Colombia, and it's published also from the same link via our Resilience BV LinkedIn page, and soon to be published on our website as well. I need to make the post and upload it.
Great, thank you, and we will read it there. So thank you for this theoretical idea of opportunities in Colombian agro-logistics, and especially in the Caribbean region. And now we will hear something about how it works also in practice from Anton Filippo from LBP Rotterdam, which has been active in Colombia for quite some time already. Anton, I quickly wanted to ask you for the video. Would you like us to show it?
Yes, please. Yes, please. It's only a short one, but please help me here.
Yes, right
I'm
now, or
different generation. Yeah, just show that video, and then because the thing I had prepared has nothing to do with what I've just saw, but I have some remarks to make, and then you could quickly go to the Q&A.
Okay.
Right. That's it, Wessel. Thank you very much for that, for helping me there, showing that little video. Yeah, I had prepared something different. The perspective now I got from this presentation from Essence, which is, by the way, very interesting, was that was not what I expected, but it was something different. Our position, we are LBP, we are a logistics company based in the Netherlands, and we are specialized in the handling and customs clearance and storage and distribution of fresh fruits and vegetables in the Netherlands. I have been traveling back into Colombia for the last at least 20 years. And we have been building up a client base in Colombia with Colombian fruit and vegetable exporters that have a business to Europe. What we do is the service I just explained, and we are helping. I think we have around 15 or 16 customers in Colombia with their business in Europe. So our work actually starts when the fruit arrives by air or by sea in Holland. well, since 2003, we have been working with a number of Colombian fruit exporters. Some of them have disappeared, and others are more steady and are still with us. Some have grown their business significantly, and others have a constant flow of shipments. But we've seen a lot of changes over the years, and that has to do with where we 20 years ago did receive a lot of fruit that was shipped by air traditionally, because it was considered to be better, or it probably was. But fruit is now arriving by sea containers. New techniques make that possible, which obviously has a huge impact on the costing of the freight. So yeah, basically what we do, we are the hub, the logistics hub for a lot of Colombian exporters in Rotterdam. Now, I could talk about that for 2 hours as well, if necessary, or maybe even more. But that is not the idea of today's webinar. I now learned. So I think, Wessel, it's better for you to focus on your Q&A on the possibilities of the investments in Colombia. For me personally, where I see a lot of opportunities in Colombia for Dutch companies is for well, obviously infrastructure. That's a huge problem. I see that we lose a lot of business, that our Colombian exporters lose a lot of business because of the infrastructure. They simply cannot move their product in a timely manner so that it could reach the European market in the state that they want it in. So infrastructure, it needs more packing facilities in more strategic places. But most of all, and I saw that in the other presentation as well, what is really needed is consolidation places. There's many smaller exporters of fresh produce that would love to export to Europe or any other destination, simply cannot complete a full container, and they need consolidation places where they can also find a way to export to Europe by sharing cargo space in containers or in airline pallets. So for that, I see a huge role for a forwarder or a packing operation that is interested in this business, and we could definitely be interested in that as well. So that is for me for now. So I had something else prepared, but I don't think that's any relevance with your previous presentation. So back to you.
Okay, Anton, thank you for this. So now we will pass to the Q&A section of the webinar. I see various questions in the chat. Could you put the questions in the Q&A widget instead of the chat, just so, because there's other things in the chat as well. So I will start with the questions that are in the Q&A part, and then Ephraim Gonzalez, hello Ephraim and welcome, asks us, are there cold rooms and ripening machines on the Dutch Caribbean islands? And I can say something about this, but maybe Susanna, Andres, Leontine, you can also enlighten us in this part.
I think you probably have the most knowledge. I can say the cold rooms, I'm pretty sure that yes. The ripening chambers, I really don't know how to answer. I'm sorry.
Don't worry, Susanna, and this is also the idea we have from our partners in the Caribbean, that there are cold rooms, but not that much ripening capacity. In general, the cold rooms are maybe rather used for their own supermarkets they have there. So we continue with another question for you, Susanna. It says, again, Ephraim, 40.5% of food waste is on a farm level. Is this caused by the heavy rains of the last year, or are there other reasons as well?
This percentage comes from a study from the DNP, the National Planning Department, I guess it translates to, from a couple of years ago. So it's not necessarily well related to the heavy rains of last year. I think that maybe, I don't know if Andres wants to say something more about this, but in general, it was mostly indicated that this percentage is lost as a farm level, but not necessarily the specific causes. I don't know if Leontine or Andres have more details on this.
Yes, thank you, Susanna. Yeah, indeed, it is related to some of the problems, the bottlenecks that you already made reference to, and at the same time, something that Anton already mentioned, which is the unavailability of the producers to commercialize their products. That, in addition to unsustainable practices at the farm level, could explain this high percentage.
All right. Thank you, Andres and Susanna. And now we see a question from Maria Dijkhoff. She says that in Aruba, in the end, it's the import that decides where and what to import. And they are used to import from the USA. And also, there are not that many ships going from Colombia to the Caribbean. And we are very aware of this, at least at Holland House Colombia. We are trying with, we are working on improving this together with local partners and also partners from the Caribbean, at least on the frequency of transport part. Yeah, the familiarity with the USA, well, we are here to help to make you familiar also with Colombia. So just let us know and we can work on that as well. Then we get a question from Arno van der Made, again for Susanna. It says, for the case study of the mango puree export, which market price per metric ton has been used to calculate RIO and profitability? I think it's ROI probably.
Thank you, Arno, for the question. Very punctual. I'm not able to answer at the top of my head. I will get back to you with this information.
All right, thank you, Susanna.
Definitely sounds like Arno with these punctual questions.
Would you like to respond, Anton? Sorry.
No, I said this sounds like a typical Arno question. Yes, always very punctual and on top of things. Absolutely.
Okay.
It's a good question. I just have I cannot store all the numbers at the same moment. Unfortunately, my mind does not allow it.
No, I agree, Susanna. It's definitely a good question. This is what I'm saying. Yeah.
I agree as well. And then we get a question from Daan Paardenkoper for Susanna or for Leontine. What is your reflection on Anton's observation that consolidation points are a key supply chain gap?
I will give my answer on this side. Thank you, Dan, for the question. I agree. Consolidation is definitely one of the key bottlenecks that we found. It can be that there's a lot of potential to improve on. Anton mentioned specifically consolidation points. I talked most about I think most about consolidation practices, so services and just the possibility to do so, because apparently it seems that in Colombia it's not yet common practice. Of course, this must be done at a certain location, and I can imagine that only part of these operations can be done on the spot at the ports. So yes, consolidation points are also very, very relevant. But also the provision of these services and this type of technologies, in this case from Dutch companies that have long histories in this and specialized in this type of technologies, is crucial, and it's something that can have a very large impact for what Anton was mentioning as well, allowing smaller producers to export their products. And in this case, also, as we mentioned, as the last case, especially towards the Caribbean island, the Dutch Caribbean island.
Great, and thank you for the question and for the answer also, Susanna. We have a quick question for you, Susanna. Can you share your presentation?
Yes, I don't know. Is it possible to share it here in the chat, or shall I then?
If you want, you can send it to me and to Andrea, and we will make sure that everyone receives it.
All right, I will do so then. Yes, no problems.
Okay, and then another question is there? I think is there interest in La Guajira for a solution for the island logistics? And I don't know if you know, Susanna, but I do know that there are some entrepreneurs from Curaçao, specifically working with people in La Guajira, in Puerto Brisa, with a relatively well, with a ship that can bring around 100 tons to the islands. But I think this is still in the beginning stages, but there's definitely interest. I don't know, Susanna or someone else, if you want to add something.
No, that is definitely in line also with what I found during the study. There is interest to restart or to start this type of routes, and definitely potential because of the extremely close proximity of La Guajira to the islands.
Yes, I would like to add something, and is that from the government perspective, there have been some approaches, and there is in fact a memorandum of understanding between the government of Curaçao and La Guajira. But from this study, we also learned that the premises of the ports in La Guajira are not that big enough to handle the volumes that are needed to export and to maintain the quality of these perishable products to the islands.
Thank you, Andres. Then we continue with a question from Martin Rohleder. He says, one of the contributors to waste at the farm gate is the higher production of mono products versus the demand. And vertical farming can potentially play a positive role to diversify the range. Is this on the agenda in Colombia and in the Caribbean? Vertical farming in Colombia. Susanna, did you read something about it? Or Andres, Leontina?
No, this is something that did not come up during the study, unfortunately.
Okay, so a good opportunity for you, Mark, to introduce it to Colombia, possibly. And then we continue with Arno van der Made, who asks us that for export from Colombia, ICA is requesting the Predio Exportador, which most of the local and smaller producers do not have, just the larger ones. Is there a solution for that when talking about sending products like vegetables to the Caribbean islands? Maybe Andres, you would know something about this?
Yes, well, that is a very good question, and I think that this is something that we can definitely talk about with ICA during our conversations with them. So we will definitely take it up. Thank you, Arno, for the question.
Thank you, Andres. And then I see no further questions in the Q&A part. If someone has another one, please.
Maybe I wanted to add something on the consolidation points, if I can. I was wondering, of course, what experience Dan Paardenkoper has in that, but maybe he can get in touch with us to see about that. What I know from my time in Chile was that the actual, I would say, like the first post-harvest processing, I would say, situation for smaller farmers is also a difficult point in the value chain, and that providing them with small solutions on farm to be actually be able to better process and process their products and keep the quality for a longer time could also be something to look into, which could be quite helpful. Not just the consolidation points, but the processes before actually getting to those points on farm.
Agreed, Leontine, and thank you for that. If there are any more questions, please put them right now in the Q&A.
Vessel, I think there's a question for Anton, and it's about being owner of the products or just a service provider, but I think I can answer that because I visited the premises of Anton a few months ago, and yes, they are a services provider.
We are never the owner of the product. That's true, Anders. Yeah. Did you like it, by the way?
Yes, indeed. Thank you. It was one of the most interesting visits.
Thank you.
Thank you. And looking at the same chat, we can see a question from René for Susanna, that out of the 6 clusters of bottlenecks, which one do you see as the most urgent?
That is a great question. I think the most urgent aspect would be allowing the products to be well, more easily transported and conserved and all of that, of course, from producer to consumer. That would cascading resolve a few other bottlenecks, a few other problems, and then would leave some more time and resources to then tackle the others, identify the other bottlenecks identified. I don't know if the others agree. I can imagine that there's different perspective on the urgencies of indeed these issues.
Yes, well, in my opinion, I think that depends from where you're standing at. If you're the government, maybe you are more interested, according to the plans of this current administration, to promote the associativity between the producers. But if you are an exporter, maybe the point that you were just presenting, it's maybe even more relevant.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andres. Then I see a question from Jan van den Berg. If we are in contact with POEM in The Hague, and yes, I think both the embassy and As het Holland House, we have a long history of working with POEM, as we say in Colombia. And then we can continue with a question from Daan Paardenkoper. How much percentage of the country's horticulture production is captured in the study's geographical scope? Would you know this, Susanna? Difficult question, I think.
I think Andres may know this.
No, I cannot tell the number from top of my head, but at the same time, I would like to invite you to see a document, a report that we wrote with a company, NNS del Trópico, in which we studied the horticulture sector for Colombia. So maybe you can find these figures there.
Great, thank you, Andres. And another question for you immediately, again from Dan. If the Dutch government has a focus on these specific regions? Or from Leontine?
We do. Yes, we do. And coming back on the question of the percentage of horticulture production, there is not that much horticulture production in those departments. Basically, most of that production is in other areas, for instance, here near Bogota. But the percentage, of course, I wouldn't be able to say, but it's not that big a percentage. Yes, we do have a focus on the Northern Caribbean region, also because of the agro-logistics actually involved and the production areas, for instance, for the bigger agri-value chains that we are importing as the Netherlands from Colombia, including palm oil and tropical fruits. As Susanna also mentioned, 3 of the main ports of Colombia are located in those northern provinces. And particularly with the Magdalena province, we have a formal collaboration on different topics.
Great. Thank you, Leontine. And if I see no more questions, so I think we can start to end this webinar. Of course, remember, if you have any more questions, don't hesitate to contact me, Leontine, Andres, Susanna, Anton, or Arjan, and we will be very excited to help you further. I want to thank, first of all of the panelists, Leontine, Arjan, Susanna, Anton, and Andres for being here today. Very valuable. I want to thank Andrea for the technical support today. And most of all, I want to thank all of you, the participants, for joining us today. I hope it was very useful. And again, don't hesitate to contact any of us for more questions, or if you want to do business in Colombia or in agro-logistics in general, in the case of Arjan. So thank you, and have a good night or day wherever you are.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks very much.